And we appreciate everyone joining today as we take a closer look at using a letter to my loved one. As mentioned in the last presentation, excuse me, Brian and I did back in August with strategic estate planning. It's important to meet with your financial advisor, CPA, and estate attorney when drafting the estate plan. There are many nuances and complexities that need to be addressed, and Brian and I are not licensed attorneys. So what we present today are tools and guidelines to help you accomplish legacy goals and create that security you need for your loved ones. So let's go ahead and get things kicked off.
I'm Brian Statz. I'm a CPA and licensed wealth advisor. I've been with Adams Brown for 36 plus years. I was certified in estate and trust planning in my earlier years, and this has been a passion of mine ever since. I joined our financial service division in 2001 as we were adding additional services to better meet our clients' needs. I am currently heading up our family office that focuses on providing holistic services to our clients. Our team helps guide our family business owners and high net worth clients through complexities and opportunities in their life cycle changes. Sean, back to you.
All right, thanks, Brian. And my name is Sean Keller. I am the wealth consultant for the Overland Park office. I've worked in the finance industry for the last 14 years. I actually cut my teeth as a private banker back in 2008, 2009, which is exactly when the recession was coming to the other side. And this was the reason why I became that financial advisor, was I had to endure many conversations about people that did not have estate plans. They did not have any financial planning that had been completed. And watching a lot of the stress and anxiety as people were trying to figure out what to do next really resonated with me and made me want to become the financial advisor that really focuses on financial planning and being a tax-centric financial planner for everyone. So let's go ahead, and for those that have listened to the strategic estate planning webinar, this slide is a high-level summary of how estate planning is just one component to your overall plan. As wealth consultants of Adams Brown, there are several goals we help our clients achieve. Each conversation can cover one topic or an array of topics with you as the central focus. So today we're going to continue to focus on estate planning, and it's important to recognize it's not just for the wealthy. So to get everyone prepared for our discussion, I like to share 7 key steps for preparing the letter for your loved one and estate planning. And for some of you, this will be a review from that last presentation as well. The first one is locating your assets and liabilities, and you'll see why later. Next is creating that will. This written document will name an executor who will carry out your wishes. The will is just instructions about the management and distribution of assets. Without the will, you may be considered dying intestate, which means the state's intestacy laws may not align with your wishes. Choosing beneficiaries and how will help you prevent any legal battles that may disrupt the family harmony. Naming a guardian for young children. Planning for medical and financial decisions through durable power of attorneys. Setting up a trust is a flexible and effective way to manage assets. And then finally, planning for estate taxes.
We're going to review this extremely powerful tool today, a letter to my loved one. As noted earlier, you can download it. Click on the link in the chat. This guide is more than just a checklist or an administrative tool. This is an opportunity to leave a legacy, to communicate your final wishes, and to make provide a roadmap on your life's asset and important documents. Now, what's inside? This is a working, living document that should be reviewed and updated annually. The first time you complete it, it may be overwhelming. Focus on one section at a time. It's like the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It's much easier talking about these items when you're years away from needing to implement them. It's much easier for your family to talk openly about death when it isn't staring them in the face and you're on your deathbed. Now let's get started. I'll turn it over to Sean.
All right, thank you, Brian. So this first section that we're going to be covering today is going to be about the advisors and the financial information. So for those that have already printed off a copy of the letter to the loved ones, or those that are looking at a PDF version, this will be page 1. So the first question is, why is it important to know all the information about the advisors? Well, this is your dream team to help navigate the waters during a difficult transition. Some spouses or children struggle to pick up pieces after the death of a family member. Many fall into psychological states of fight, flight, or freeze. When this crisis happens, it's hard to discern this new reality. For a spouse not familiar with finances, he or she is going to be battling a financial and psychological challenge, preventing them from moving forward while they're stuck in grief. And so I'd like to actually share a personal story about a client that I had when I first started my career. And we're going to call her Sue for the benefit of the story. She came to my office and her husband had passed. He ran all the financial accounts, paid all the bills, took care of everything. She came to me with tears in her eyes. She didn't even know what she was supposed to do. She didn't know where she was supposed to go. After all of this time, she sat down. She goes, Sean, I don't even know how to write a check to pay a bill. Now, sitting in my chair, it was hard to hold back tears knowing that somebody was hurting this much. And in that moment, I realized this, without a financial plan, without estate planning, without having anything for that loved one, this person was going to struggle to find all of the information that was needed. So with that being said, this is also a great opportunity to identify this trusted person today that's going to be the quarterback for all those financial matters. On this page, you will see the accountant, the attorney, the employer, and a financial planner.
Sean, once I have all this information documented, what should my spouse or family do when I die?
That's a great question, Brian. One of the things I like to look at is maybe utilizing that team approach. This is a great opportunity to outline that team leader. And upon death, that's going to be your first contact. This is somebody that's going to help coordinate all of the financial information, and that's going to be able to help guide this individual or individuals through those steps. And a great segue to this too is that Adams Brown Family Office can be the quarterback or the coordinator of this team. So let's go ahead and move on to page 2. In today's environment, your financial planner may handle your life and disability insurance. There's still others out there that keep insurance with their property and casualty advisor. While some of these pieces that you're filling out on this form today may be redundant, it's a guideline to help keep you organized. One of the things that I really like to stand out on this, though, is the pension benefits. For those of you that still have that as an opportunity, it's important to understand those pension benefits early and often, as you never know when things may change. For those that have that pension that have never reviewed this and are just waiting until it's closer to retirement, now is the time to start looking at this unknown topic and have that conversation, have the clarity about what those benefits are for not only you, but if you pass, what that looks like for your family members. So on this page, you're also going to see that you have your life, health, and disability insurance advisors, your mortgage holders, the pension benefits I discussed, and then that property and casualty advisor. And for some of you, you still may have a stockbroker out there. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to page 3. On page 3, this is where you're going to start looking at your investments in real property. For those using a wealth consultant, he or she is going to have most, if not all of your information already. But for those DIY folks, those do-it-yourselfers that are going out there and purchasing your own stocks, bonds, mutual funds, this is an imperative page to ensure all stocks, bonds, investments, vehicles are accessible. So what do I mean by that? Investment account numbers are a great way to start this and where those documents are being stored. This is a great opportunity to start printing off page 1 of all your investment statements and financial statements to keep with the file. Now, you may have an advisor like myself that talks so much about having a disaster file on hand. This is a readily accessible along with this tool today that you can keep in a safe place where a family member has the opportunity to find it that's readily accessible. Now, on this page, you're going to see the investments, the contact information, phone numbers, documents, and where they're located, along with the financial statements. So with that, let's go ahead and turn over to page 4.
Sean, what are some of the challenges for clients with digital assets such as Bitcoin and US Treasury Direct?
Where to begin on this one? The digital world has made our lives so much more simple, but also complex at the same time. So I had mentioned previously about the importance of having account numbers and page 1 statements to keep with the file. This is also a new spot for us. It's essential for digital assets where credentials are using usernames and passwords for access to keep these with you as well. There are many times that you have an amount for your legacy, and that could be left behind for several years because these beneficiaries do not have access to this information. So as I talked about this at the bottom of the page, Brian, I wanted to turn to you on this one. So there is a section discussing money owed to us by someone if a loan is signed in writing. But that may not always be the case. So can you think of a personal experience where someone had a verbal contract that was disputed upon death?
Yeah, I've worked with several families that when the parents pass away, we're going through the bank activity. We're trying to gather the different financial documents and reviewing the bank activity. It was unclear whether the checks that are written to the children, we see checks written throughout the year, and whether it was a gift or a loan. In fact, I worked with one family where the parents had noted on the check that this is a loan, but the child swore up and down that mom and dad intended that to be a gift.
That's great feedback, and I really appreciate that. So one of the other questions that comes to mind is, what challenges do you see in the asset section when dealing with that estate?
Yeah, a challenge is to make sure that we are clear on our intentions. If it's a gift or a loan, to document it in writing, set the expectations, even between spouses. Talk to your spouse, make sure you're both on the same page. Is the money we were paying to the kids intended to be repaid, or is that a gift? Keep the documents up to date. When loans are paid off, make sure we're documenting that. If we're forgiving the loan, make sure we're documenting that as well, clarifying that. So, Sean, what about liabilities?
All right, let's go ahead and move on to page 5. And you're going to notice on this page, a lot of the information looks very similar to what you saw in the asset section. So, Brian, I'm going to turn this back to you. And what advice can you give our viewers to simplify this document?
Yeah, one thing that I recommend is that everyone keep a personal financial statement every year. Again, just a listing of your assets and liabilities. Keep it up to date. And I use that document. I keep mine in Excel. I use that document to also document the additional information, contact numbers, phone numbers, things like that, and just keep that document, make reference in this document so you're not duplicating it, and then attach it to this document, and that way you'll have everything in one place when the time comes.
That
So
sounds like
next,
great feedback, Brian. Thank you so much. So let's go ahead and move on to page 6. And this is a continuation of liabilities. And the very top portion, you'll talk about the credit cards. And I think it's important to remember that credit cards are an unsecured creditor. So if the estate has any assets, these companies may or will try to collect the outstanding balances. So you'll see on this page, credit card and leases. Brian, we were speaking a few days ago about all these points and perks that credit cards have to offer. Um, I mean, what else would you add to our viewers and listeners today?
Yeah, don't forget about to make notes about any of the credit cards you have that accumulate points or miles, airline travels, other benefits that possibly could be transferred to your loved ones upon your death. Uh, I think oftentimes those items just get forgotten and then they expire and no one gets the benefit from it. Um, so with that, we've covered a lot in section one. Sean, can you tell? Let's move on to section two.
Yeah, that sounds great. So we're going to talk about insurance and benefits. So we're starting to take another bite of that elephant right now. So I didn't eat breakfast this morning, so it sounds pretty good to me. So let's go ahead and move on to page, for those following, this will be page 6 and page 7. So currently I'm on page 7 of the letter to the loved one document. So one of the questions that always gets asked, when is the last time your life insurance policy has been reviewed? And I'm not saying it needs to be done annually, but I do need to stress the importance of making it a topic of conversation with your advisors, especially when loans or cash balances are involved. Now, today's topic is not meant to get into the weeds of insurance, but to start to identify how loans and cash value can impact the death benefits from the policy. So the question then is, do your loved ones know the advisor or have the policy statement to contact the carrier? And are they familiar with any reductions in possible death benefits? Now, policy statements are already complex, and it's especially true when you're dealing with disability insurance. While these vehicles are not as exciting to look at as the returns on investments, you have spent a significant amount of time and money to build these safety nets to protect those you love.
Sean, you're probably the only one that thinks life insurance policies are exciting, but that's great. But Sean, I do have a question. I have a client a couple weeks ago that said they lost their life insurance policies in a tornado a few years ago. I guess what would you recommend that they do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Digital files are amazing tools in today's environment with the advancements in technology. As a financial planner myself, I request a copy of all insurance policy statements, whether I wrote the policy or not, for their financial plan. Advisors doing a little bit above and beyond can help clients gain peace of mind in all aspects of their life and still have that accessibility through their trusted advisors, even when natural disasters strike.
Sean, any tips or tricks in completing this section?
Very similar to the asset section, one of the things I say is make sure that you have a copy of the policy statement for each policy, and that's including for group term insurance. This is going to have all the key information, whether it be account numbers, phone numbers, beneficiaries, anything that's going to be important for this person to be able to make educated decisions and figure out who to call while they're with their quarterback. So let's go ahead and move on to page 8. And what we'll talk about here is the employment benefits. Now, Brian, employer benefits typically get reviewed during open enrollment periods. What advice would you give to our viewers and listeners today?
Yeah, I recommend that you make a conscious effort, at least annually, to sit down with your employer to review your benefits. I don't know how many people I talk to that they don't understand what benefits their employer is necessarily offering them. Have a meeting, get some documentation, get a summary of benefits from your employer, and contact information as to who at your employer that they should contact if something happens to you, and attach this to the letter to your loved one. So, wow, we've made it through section 2 and section 204. So let's see if we can take one more bite off of with section 3 next. So section 3, we're going to talk about documents and other information. If you're following along, we're on page 9 of the letter for your loved one. Based on a survey in 2022, 67% of households do not have an estate plan. If you don't make an estate plan, you are considered to die intestate. So you have to follow the estate plan that the state government has for you, which may not be ideal. I'd recommend at least have some basic estate planning documents. The first five on this list to me are critical. You want to have a will, a living will, medical power of attorney, medical derivative, and general power of attorney. You should update these documents whenever you have a life-changing event. So when you leave the home, you're starting your life, get married, have kids, leave the home, you get a divorce, retirement, death of a spouse. Apart from this, you should at least review it every 2 to 3 years. But anytime a life-changing event, it's critical that you take a deep dive in these documents, make sure we're updating them. I recommend keeping a copy of the documents all in one place. I think Sean referred to his disaster file, something similar where, again, one place that your executor or your trustee or your, again, often your spouse, I tell my spouse it's in the left-hand drawer of my desk, look in this file. And that way they know where they need to look, and it needs to be accessible to them if something happens.
Brian, you mentioned all of these documents for estate planning. Can you share a personal story where someone did not have an estate plan?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of stories of famous people that died without estate plans. Prince, Elvis Presley, Jimi Hendrix died in 1970, and his heirs battled over his estate for more than 30 years. Can you imagine what the attorney fees were on that? So over the years, I've worked with several clients that had died without a plan, and we helped the family through the probate process. So that's, again, going through the court system. I had one client early in my career that had a trust set up. So they took step one, they formed a trust, met with the attorney, created a trust document, but they never funded it. They never transferred the assets in the title of the trust. So they spent the money to set it up, but they got no benefit from that. So all the assets fell outside the trust. And so we had to help the surviving spouse gather the assets and report it through the court system.
That's fantastic information. Great knowledge on that. So I did have a follow-up question, and that is, can you share some challenges that beneficiaries face not being able to locate all the documents? And before you go into that, I did want to share a story myself of a time when I did not had to run into a situation. I was meeting with some children of a deceased family, and they were getting prepared to actually sell the house, and they were finding CDs in all the nooks and crannies, basically in the attic, in the basement, in the vaults. So it was located everywhere, and they were pretty sure they were never going to be able to get the estate completed because everything was just scattered. So what are those challenges that beneficiaries are facing not being able to locate those documents?
Yeah, I have similar experience. I had a client whose spouse had passed away. The spouse's husband had always taken care of all the finances, so she didn't have a clue what they had. And so we spent a significant amount of time wading through different financial records, backtracking, trying to figure out what investments they had. They too had CDs that the husband, anytime he found a better rate somewhere, he opened up a new CD in a different bank. So we had CDs in banks across several states. And again, very, very time consuming and costly process for us to track down those assets. And it wasn't a pleasant experience for the surviving spouse either. So Well, let's look at page 10 next in the letter to your loved one.
Yeah, Brian, I did have a question as we're looking at this section. A common question that I hear is, I thought a will would protect my assets. Is there anything else I can do to protect these assets from going to probate?
Yeah. So the will, it only provides guidance for the courts and for your executor to distribute the assets, and tells them how to pay the debts, but it doesn't avoid probate. So it's a guide they use through the probate process. That's what the will is for. You can title assets in a way that do not go through probate. Is title it joint tenancy with right of survivorship or transfer on death. Or you can use a trust to eliminate the probate process on some or all of the assets.
Okay, that's great information. Another common question that I'm hearing from clients, though, is how often should we review our trust? And do we always have to sit down with an attorney?
Of course, anytime would recommend, again, you at least review it every 2 to 3 years. Ideally, you're looking at it every year as you're updating your personal financial statement within that, or attaching it to this letter to my loved one. As far as talking to an attorney, you need to include the attorney anytime there's a major life change event that I'd mentioned before. That's critical. So now let's discuss page 10. If you're following along. You want to make sure that your executor or trustee can get access to your safe deposit box if you have important documents inside of that. And again, this section talks about the safe deposit box and a safe. So, do you make sure you're providing, how do you have access to that? Just to note, on a safe deposit box, it can only be opened by someone that is listed as an authorized person to open that box. So some of the horror stories I have heard, well, the will or the trust document is locked up in a safe deposit box, and no one has authority to open it because only the individual that owned it. And so then they actually have to go through the court process to grant authority for the someone to open it, so they can figure out who the executor or trustee was going to be. So important to make sure you're providing those items to so they're easily accessible. So next we're going to go to page 12 of the guide. Don't forget the various online account login passwords. Facebook can be very difficult to close for a deceased person. We had a family member pass away several years ago, and we could not get their Facebook account closed. There was no provisions to allow someone else to act. And so we're just monitoring the account. So if somebody's posting to that Facebook account, we know it's a fraudulent transaction. But make sure you're having provisions while you're alive to address some of these challenges.
Yeah, and Brian, I noticed on the bottom of page 12, there's a section in there that's talking about special needs family members. So what steps should I be proactive with when handling a special needs family member?
Yeah, so that it's with the special needs family member, it's important to understand what their future needs are going to be, and then be able to provide for them when you're not able to provide after you're gone. So one thing that is often used is a special needs trust, and that can be set up. It's important to be aware of the titling or the gifting that happens to someone with special needs, to make sure it's not running contrary to the government programs, and this could prevent them from seeking the benefit of some of these programs if they inherit too much or the wrong assets. So next, let's go on to page 13. So if you have non-public traded businesses, we want to make sure you have a buy-sell agreement. Again, a provision of how you would transfer your ownership interest in that business. So again, well, as we're getting ready for our last bite of the elephant, section 4, we're going to be talking about page 13, dealing with the final stages in life.
Yeah, and Brian, on this first page here, I did want to know how much authority and at what levels can a durable power of attorney have through incapacity?
Yeah, so again, the durable power of attorney is a very powerful tool, and it's flexible where you can grant any type of authority within that document to full authority. They can do anything that you can do, or limited authority. So if you want someone to just only take care of your healthcare needs, you can dictate that in that power of attorney, so that they can act upon your behalf. Because again, at that point, usually when your power of attorney kicks in, you are incapacitated and you can't act on your own benefit. You need someone else that has authority to do that. But remember, a durable power of attorney is only in effect when you're alive. So when you die, that document no longer is enforced. That's where a trust or trustee would normally kick in.
Okay. And Brian, can more than one person be listed as a durable power of attorney?
Yeah, I mean, you can list as many people as you want. It's important, I think, to have a contingency, so that if one power of attorney is unable or unwilling to serve, you have the next one listed down the line. I would caution having too many people listed as a power of attorney, because again, you need to be able to make a decision, or they need to be able to make a decision. And so sometimes if you have too many cooks in the kitchen, it's hard to get something accomplished.
Yeah, and Brian, if I can just share a quick story in regards to this as well, of having more than one person listed as a durable power of attorney. So this was several years ago. I actually had a story of a father who was incapacitated, and he had 3 daughters. One daughter was an RN, one was a bank manager, and the other one was a stay-at-home mom. Now, he had already had these conversations with all of his daughters. The daughter that was an RN knew she was incapable of making financial decisions, because her thought process would be to sell everything and go ahead and just pay everything off as is. But she was very strong in the aspect of, if she needed to make any healthcare decisions, she felt confident in her ability. His other daughter, the bank manager, knew from a standpoint of crisis, she would not be able to make the tough decisions from the healthcare side. She was always concerned that if he wanted to go ahead and be on a DNR, for do not resuscitate, for those that don't know what that is, she would not be able to follow through with those plans. But she felt confident with being able to make all the financial decisions. So she felt she could handle anything from that point. The stay-at-home mom, she was indifferent. She said that she could handle anything that came at her. But in the end, the father chose the RN and the bank manager, the RN to handle healthcare, the bank manager to handle the financial, and the stay-at-home mom was actually the contingent for both of them in the event that they could not make those decisions. So just wanted to share with that for everyone, that there are opportunities out there by having those conversations with your children or those that you care most about. So with that said, Brian, let's go ahead and move on to page 14.
Yeah, Sean, and just a follow up from your comment, it is important, and this document can be where you list the reason why you're choosing certain family members to be the power of attorney. because of their expertise or their ability, so that some family members aren't felt upset or put off because they weren't chosen. You know, if you have a reason, list it in the document so it's clear, that communication. Next section, I want to talk about, on the final wishes, the prepaid. Uh, you know, prepaid prepaid arranged funeral costs can be a great gift for your loved ones. This eliminates the guesswork and the pressure your loved ones have to make decisions at the worst possible time. That's after you've passed and they're grieving. So I've seen situations where the family members are in the funeral home trying to pick out a casket, and it's, there's some pressure there that, hey, oh, I'm sure mom would have wanted the gold plated casket. In reality, mom maybe didn't want to spend a chunk of her wealth on something like that. She would have rather had it go to one of the children. So again, if you make those pre-arrangements, that eliminates that stress on the family. So a very great gift to give your family is make those pre-planned, pre-arranged gift to them. Next, let's turn to page 15. Has some key items to note.
Yeah, and at the bottom of page 15, there is a section in there that actually will talk about the family pets. And I'm going to go ahead and just share a personal story about family pets when the final wishes were not laid out for what was going to happen to them. So not everything has to be doom and gloom to share with all these stories. A husband and wife had passed, and they had two boys that were left with to pick up the pieces. Now, the estate plan was all drafted. Everything was great. Everything looked where it was supposed to be. But the one thing that was missing in these final wishes and in the estate was the family pets. Now, they had a couple dogs, and unfortunately, in this situation, son number one did not want the dogs, didn't want anything to do with them. Son number two, he could not have dogs. He could not have the pets in the house for other reasons. So we were stuck in this mode of neither family member could have the pets, and this, unfortunately, the dogs have no home at this point. The unfortunate circumstances were they ended up having to take the pets that were the family pets for several years to a shelter, and unfortunately they had to stay there. The good news was one of the brothers did get back with me, shared with me that they both got it. The pets did get adopted, the dogs did. So that was a great story at the end of it. But it was one of those heartbreaking moments again, where we think about all the financial pieces and all these other individuals. But if you have pets, it is so important to make sure that you're drafting exactly where those little fur babies and these loved ones want to go as well.
Yeah, Sean, that's a great point. I mean, this document goes well beyond just the financial transfers. There's so many things to consider. And again, that's why we're there's so much detail within this document, trying to cover the things that each one should consider. But it's sort of one size fits one when it comes to estate planning. So it's important for you to complete the document, to review the document, but then also to bring it to your advisors to help so that they can provide some feedback as well. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And by providing this information to your trusted advisors, this way they can ask you maybe questions you didn't think about. Hey, have you had provisions for your pet? You've missed that section. Next, we're hitting the home stretch, and turn to page 16. And this is sort of a blank page where you can just document whatever is important, tell your life story, share moments that were meaningful for you during your lives, things that you're maybe a legacy that you want to leave behind. Reflect on what gave you joy in your life, some insight to you for for your future heirs, your lineal descendants can look back on. Next, we'll turn to page 17. It's important to remember that this is just a guide. This document's not intended to be a legal document. As Sean indicated, we're not attorneys. Talk to your attorney. Make sure that what is said in these documents, though, is coordinated or linked up with your estate, formal legal documents, so that there's not any confusion as to really what your intents were. And those legal documents were listed on page 9 for your reference. So, of course, we have our standard disclosures we have to make on the.
Yeah, so we have our standard disclosures that we're going to be making, and then let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And this is just another reminder that the letter to the loved one fillable guide was sent to the email upon your registration, and it can also be accessed on the link within the chat if you did not have access to that today.
Okay. Does look like we have a question in the chat. What's the difference between a revocable trust and a living trust, and which are best for married couples? You know, there's some terminology in the estate planning world that can be interchangeable. So a revocable trust is one that can be changed during your lifetime, a living trust as well. So those could be interchangeable as part of as you're talking through. So those are basically the same type of document. A living will, which is noted above on page 9, is where you're communicating your desires that, hey, if I'm in a vegetable state, you know, do they pull the plug or not? So that is a different document.
Alrighty, thanks, Brian and Sean. Do we have any other questions for the panelists? Alrighty. Well, we will end on that note. Thank you for answering those questions, Brian and Sean. That will conclude today's webinar. There will be a follow-up. Oh, we have one more. Sorry. It looks like if you have all your documents in place and the letter to my loved ones filled out and have a trust, about how long does it take to get things all settled?
Boy, no, that's a good question. So again, it depends. Depends on what your estate consists of. You know, what type of assets you have. You know, I've seen them estates settled in as little as 3 or 4 months, and the IRS basically says you should have your estate settled within 2 years. But as I mentioned before, Jimi Hendrix took 30 years to settle.
And looks like we got another question in the chat. Would it be good for a person to write up their own obituary? You know, we say it depends a lot. You know, I have seen this go 2 different ways. For somebody that doesn't really, people don't really know them personally, or they just don't have those connections, I've seen somebody go ahead and draft that. That empty page is a good place to go ahead and create some of that obituary information. I do have that personal experience as well. When I had my Aunt Susan had passed last year, she did not have any information, so one of my cousins had to spend a lot of time building that. At the same time, if you're in a situation that you have a very connected family and it's a very open dialogue, they may know a lot of things about yourself and have a lot of input that they would like to say too. So that's where it just becomes it's just how you want to be perceived by other people and how you feel their communication would be about you in the end. Brian, what would you add to this?
Yeah, no, I think this would be a good document to go ahead and sort of communicate what you would like to have said about you as part of this process. Again, take some of that burden off of your loved ones. So I would support at least providing an outline for your own obituary.